Since we're on the topic of race, I think that this is a great story time opportunity to talk about my upbringing. I have a black mother and a white father. Growing up, I didn't know that I was different, but I knew that something was supposed to be a secret. Trigger warning, this is about racial passing and my experience growing up in my hometown back in the day. We moved from another state, and my grandma, who's white, she kept telling me, you can't go around telling people that your mom is black. You have to tell them that that's the nanny. When you go to school, like, don't mention your mom. It's like, why? I remember asking her why. And she was like, because it's gonna be harder for you. They're gonna treat you differently. They're gonna put you in stupid classes and all this stuff that she was telling me. But I knew from my grandmother, it was more of a social aspect. She didn't want people knowing that her grandchildren were like half black. In this elementary school I went to, I noticed that double fountains, not just like a small one and a big one, but it was like a small one and a big one and then another small one and a big one next to them. And it was always near the bathrooms. And I always questioned, why is there two girls' bathrooms like so close to each other and two boys' bathrooms so close to each other? I didn't know that my school was at one point a segregated school. Two black people in my whole school. Everyone else was white. My hair would curl because of the humidity, and my grandma wanted to erase the black. She wanted to erase the black. Back in the day, there was something called Japanese perms, a relaxer, and I would just remember my scalp burning in the shower. Other things that she would do, she would like, when you go to like the beauty supply store and you see like those like special soaps, she would put all those soaps on me and tell me like stay in the shade, squeeze my nose, thinking that it'll make it smaller. Starts questioning you, just say that you're Italian. And it's just crazy. So there was this black boy named Jeremy that like joined our class like mid-year. When I tell you, that's when I learned that they'll treat you differently. Jeremy wasn't allowed to go on the blacktop. Jeremy had to stay inside. Jeremy, obviously like schools have like funding for like kids that can't go to like certain like field trips. They'll leave Jeremy behind. The kids will call Jeremy and like the teachers would just like laugh about it. And I always felt like Jeremy knew that I was part black, but he didn't like no. Like he like felt it but didn't know. That's when I noticed like, oh shit, if I tell someone I'm black, like I'm gonna be treated like Jeremy. So I just didn't tell anyone. It wasn't like I was ashamed or something, but I was taught like this was something bad. There would be like parent-teacher conference, and my grandmother would show up in replacing my mom. My mom's very submissive, very sweet woman. Oh, you can't show up. You're gonna ruin this family. You're gonna ruin her opportunities if you tell people. I'm not one of those like self-hating. I'm not here like, oh, don't look at my mom. Like none of that. Like me and my mom were really cool. Like we really chill. She was just here like yesterday. But my grandma, trials and tribulations. So my mom one day randomly decided to show up to the elementary school, and it was my birthday. When people saw my mom, they thought it was the nanny. I guess I slipped and said mom. This girl, I forgot what her name was, like Crystal or whatever. She was like, you're, and I was like, no, I'm not. So this Crystal girl went around, told everybody that I'm actually like black and making fun of me. They said, oh, that's why your hair looks like it's electrocuted. Like my teachers started asking me, they're like, are you? I was like, no, that's my nanny. That's not my mom. And I remember going home and I asked my mom, I was like, why can't I tell people you're my mom? And she was like, it's just for your own good. The moral of this story with the elementary school is that if I ended up telling people that I was black, I would have been in like these horrible classes. I wouldn't have been taught properly. I wouldn't have gotten like the new textbooks. They gave the black kids the old ass textbooks and had them in a different class. Like they would come for certain classes, but not all the classes. And you could just tell that they were like a little behind with school. And then I knew that, yeah, I was getting like good education, But I always like, it was nothing that I was like, oh, I'm ashamed of being this. It was like, why do I have to keep this secret? And nobody looked like me. Nobody looked like me. And I was just so confused as a kid. But then when I got to high school, that's when I started noticing that people say some wild ass shit. I went to high school, people started calling people hard ERs. There's more black people. And nobody knew. Nobody knew. And then I think it was my junior year, I just like told everyone, I'm like, you guys know I'm half black, right? Nobody believed me. This is my mom, showing them pictures, showing them my cousins and all this stuff. I like finally, like, I used to like relax my hair like all the time. And then I finally like let my hair grow. I just like lived in my truth. And yeah, they treated me a little differently after that. But I felt so happy to just like not live with this weird secret. But then now I understand why my mom, well, it wasn't really my mom, it was my grandma. It was not like the imitation of art where I was trying to disown my mother and live my life as a white woman. That was not the case. I don't know, like as an adult looking back at it, I can imagine how confused I was as a child. I never like I said, hated my mom or felt like I was ashamed of being black. I just knew that I saw that if I told people, I would be treated differently. And so that's where the whole like light skin privilege and all this stuff and this whole biracial talk that's going on TikTok is like trending, because they're like, you don't know what it's like. And yeah, like I don't know what it's like, but I saw, and I also had a black mom and I saw her experiences and I saw how like my father's family treated her. And to this day, I don't really like fuck with them like that.
Oh, y'all just finding out about Libya sending us $1 billion? Baby, this ain't the first time Africa has spent the block on us. Baby, this ain't the first time. Africa spent the block on us in New York back during colonial times. As a sorry, hey, we love y'all and we hate the way that they treated y'all. Our bad. So they started coming through the World Trade Center before it became what it was today. Central Park used to be that actual the suburb, the black flourishing suburb. You know why it flourished so well? Because African countries and leaders and rich people from those African countries that were, you know, cashing out over their, you know, trades and Ivory Coast and all that shit, Nigeria and them, they would come over here and bring all those expensive shit to our neighborhoods. They would take that shit, sell it to the white folks, get the money to us as a, let's make sure our niggas is up, okay? This was during colonial times. You want to know what the white folks did? Go Google what's underneath Central Park. You know what's underneath Central Park. Libya spent the block on us. Gaddafi made it very clear, no ma'am, I will not be giving this money over to no Caucasian whatsoever. You know who he chose in 1996? Louis Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan was supposed to receive the $1 billion and distribute it equally amongst all African Americans. We was all supposed to receive our payments in addition to us building certain things here. And it was contingent upon there being continuous payments. There was going to be continuous money being funneled into the black community here in America through Libya. You want to know what America did? They blocked Louis Farrakhan from getting the money. Go look it up. It's on Google. Most recent one, Nigeria. The Nigerian billionaire, everybody knows about the Nigerian billionaire that was killed, that was targeted by America and was killed in a helicopter plane crash. His one job was to come over here, and I believe it was like 2023. The end of 2023, he came over here, somewhere around like November. His one job was to bring money and teach black people over here financial literacy. You want to know what America did? They killed his ass. They don't like the idea of them taking care of us. They hate that shit.
As a black person from the United States who occasionally goes abroad, I notice that a lot of us have what I like to call the American ego. Now, I'm not saying that this is inherently a good or bad thing, but I am saying that when a situation comes up, a disrespectful situation, usually having something to do with racism, our reactions tend to kind of give away where we're from. Not just our voice, but like how we're physically reacting to the situation. It's interesting because in so many ways we have the ego of the United States, But in the United States, we don't have the privilege to back it up, which is why so many of us are incarcerated. Like, the government loves that we have this ego about us because it gives them another excuse to lock us up, even though everybody's kind of displaying this form of ego in the United States. Anyway, let me give you an example. I'm at a hotel in Lima, Peru. In the elevator, there is a Peruvian couple to my side, and there are 3 Canadians that get in. And I know they're Canadians because they're very loudly bragging about being from Montreal to the front desk workers. So I know they're Canadian when we get on the elevator. And I assume this dumbass bitch was about the mind that I didn't know English. So she turns around and, like, to her friends, she's, like, looking dead at me as she says this. So that's why I'm like, she probably doesn't think I know English. But she goes, I wonder if she's like an N-word from Jamaica, or like an N-word from America, or like an N-word from... And I don't know what she was going to say next, because by the time she gets to that third N-word, my hand is just moving. It's just moving. Allegedly, my hand is moving. And then she's fallen against the elevator door, and she's holding her face, and she's looking so fucking confused. And the other white girl next to her is looking confused, and the white guy behind the second girl goes American. And for a second, I think about responding to him, but then she's like getting up again. She's getting up off the door, and she's headed toward, she's like angled toward me. And I don't want that. So she ends up back against the door. Don't know how. And then it's their turn to get off the elevator. So they get off the elevator, and she just kind of follows them. And it just left me thinking, like, that was a really American response.
Go and ask the anthropologists, who is first? White people or black people? Come on. If white people were first on this earth, you never could have got here, because no white man can produce a black offspring. Huh? When they want to find the origin of man, they don't go to Europe, they go to Africa. The white man is not a native anywhere on the earth, but everywhere on the earth they have gone, they have found a sign that you were already there. You are the original people, therefore you are the first. You are the elder. You are the stronger.
Stanford did a study where they sent out thousands of duplicate resumes to Fortune 500 companies. Half of these fake resumes had black sounding names like Tyrell and Lamar. The other half had white sounding names like Walker and Bobby. Half of the black applicants had a felony on their resume. Half did not. Half of the white applicants had a felony on their resume. Half did not.
About 34% of whites with no criminal record received a callback or job offer. In the case of black testers, 14% of those with no criminal background received a callback or job offer. But the most surprising finding was really related to blacks with no criminal background relative to whites with a felony conviction. We find that a white applicant with a felony conviction fared just as well, if not better, relative to a black applicant with a clean record.
A white applicant with a felony conviction got callbacks at a higher rate than a black applicant with the same resume that didn't have a felony conviction.
This suggests that being black in America today is essentially like having a felony conviction in terms of one's chances of finding employment.
This is structural racism.
Then what are you doing with that gun?
Well, what are you doing with yours?
Let me see that rifle, son.
No. This is my private property. According to California law, we got a constitutional right to bear arms.
What? That's okay, move along. Go on about your business.
Wait, brothers and sisters, no. You ain't got to go nowhere. This is your business. Stay right here. The law says, as long as you stand a reasonable distance, that's 8 to 10 feet to be exact, you got a right to observe the police carrying out their duties. From what I can see, you're standing 22 feet away from this man. So, brothers, ain't no law being broken.
That's right. You stay right where you are. You ain't got to go nowhere.
Tip her program. Learn about the Black Panther Party.
Is that gun loaded, boy?
Fish and game law clearly states it's unlawful to carry a live round of ammunition in the chamber of a shotgun or rifle in a vehicle. Pig.
Refer to him as officer.
Then don't you refer to him as boy.
Well, is it loaded?
I tell you, officer, it wasn't, but now it is.
Who is a badass nigga? Now, for the last time, boy, what do those guns mean?
They mean, Pig, that the Black Panther Party declares you try to brutalize our community, you try to take our weapons. We'll shoot you, man.
Jesus, I think I done died and gone to heaven.
Start by saying the King of Belgium created a slave colony for 30 years. The government of Belgium ran the slave colony for another 40 years. The CIA assassinated your first popular leader, Mr. Lumumba, and then installed another dictatorship for the next 30 years. And then Glencore and others now suck out your cobalt without giving you tax income. We don't reflect on that. We say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you govern properly? And so we have a system, but we need a different system. We cannot turn this over to the private sector. We already did about 100 years ago. Not only to the private sector with the U.S. military behind it, with the defense of these property rights in the Minister of Honduras's country, where United Fruit ran the country for a long time. And their attorney was the foreign minister of the United States, Secretary Dulles, and his brother was the head of the CIA and overthrew the next door neighbor, Mr. Arbenz, to make sure that United Fruit could have its property. So we have a system, but we need a different system.
I hate the fact that I haven't gave Mr. Flowers every week a chance because I'm still waiting on Mr. 3 baby mamas and 2 cases to get it together. Like, what?
I hate the fact that so many of my people are in that comment section agreeing with her, specifically my women. When I say my women, I mean women. You know what I mean? My hands actually a little bit, but I'm sad that it's my people in them comments saying, yeah, like I'm waiting for mine to get out of jail. Like, what's really sad is they only do this because it's the love they think they deserve. What they think is that they're so attracted to the felon, the bad boy, the is that and third. But it's that, but it's simply that they think that's the type of love they deserve. So they don't like Mr. Give You Flowers every week because you don't think you deserve that, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. In the back of your mind, that's turning you off because you think it's on yourself, why is this dude doing all this for me? You can say I'm wrong. Like, of course you want to say I'm wrong, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, why is this dude buying me dinner? Why is this dude buying me flowers? Why is he treating me so nice? In the back of your mind, like, I don't deserve this. So I'm like, it's turning you off. It's making you think it's a red flag. It's a fight or flight response. You know what I mean? It gives you anxiety. It makes you feel strange. And not the anxiety that you like that turns you on. So all my people in the comments, it's just like, bro, the CIA did their job. Like, you gotta clap it up for the CIA for real, because they did their job. You look at the black community pre-80s, right? Pre-80s, we're all unified. We doing marches. We all dressed up, snazzy suits. We all have black community meetings. There is no ghetto. Like, you walk down the street in a black neighborhood, you're not gonna get robbed. You're not gonna get robbed. You know what I mean? It was just the black community. It wasn't the ghetto. It was just the black community. The CIA did what they did in the 80s. When they dropped them, let's say that powdered sugar and them Nerf rifles in the black community. All of a sudden, you see what's going on there. You see what they're talking about on TikTok just now. And the CIA did their job.
They had a law that they created that said that anything other than grass could not be in your front yard. It's called the Beautification Act of America. Because people had whole farms. You wanted a lot of land, not to cut that sucker with a lawnmower, to grow stuff, to take care of your stuff. But no, we need you to go to the grocery store now. And keep in mind, the grocery store doesn't have anything growing. And in your mind, you keep saying it's a grocery store and there's nothing growing. You go to the pharmacy and there's no farm. But you know, your mind has been programmed by lack, limitation, and not enoughness in a slave mindset. You're not able to put it all together here. Right. There's nothing in here healthy.
Right.
So the bottom line is we were taught to limit ourselves from our natural healing. We were taught to be afraid of getting into our natural self because that's paganism. Herbalism is paganism. Right. You got crystals and you got stones and things, and you into these numbers. That's pagan. Right. You got to go to the church to get your healing, and you got to wait till you die to go to heaven. Right. But the book, I'm reading the book, it don't say that. Where's this in the book at? Right. I thought it said something about creating heaven on earth. I thought it said something about you can do more than I. Right. Once you realize that you've got to reach this divine state inside you, and once you reach that, they call it in Sanskrit the siddhi. You have to reach this divine state, right, where you are existing, right, by creating your outcome in your mind first. First in your mind, then feel it like it's already happened. Right. Feel like you are creating heaven on earth. Feel your body healing. Feel your organs regenerating. Right. I've had people who have healed just from thought. Right. I said, just focus on your leg, your knee, being better. We're taught as children in the system that we've come through that what we have is what we have. Yeah. And it's a struggle. You learn the language of struggle. You learn the language of pain. You're told how hard it's going to be to be healthy, how hard it's going to be to get married and stay married, how hard it's going to be in school. It's all the language of struggle. But you're taught the language of ex-slaves who are now mentally, physically, spiritually enslaved. So the language that they're speaking is the language of disempowerment. Yeah. You're talking about what can't happen. And then if you say something like magic, oh, don't say that. You don't want to get into that magic. Black magic is bad. Black magic is the ability to go into the darkness and recreate yourself. Form life. Darkness is where everything comes from, but they scare you of your own power. So everything is about fear. So the average person grew up in a family that lived in fear. They had an inferiority complex, right? And once you have that inferiority complex, you teach it to the children. Okay. Nobody's taught that I remember I used to have to go outside and pick those dandelions out the grass. They had a special little tool. Yeah. My father would say, go out there and get rid of those dandelions. Little did I know that these dandelions, because every once in a while I'd take one and eat it. Yeah. Something just said eat it. My father said, you eating those things? Well, they're good. I like them. You know what I'm saying? Then we find out that dandelion is so important to help regenerate the blood, help the kidneys, the liver, and the spleen. Yeah. This is medicine. But why do we get it out of the lawn? Because they had a law that they created that said that anything other than grass could not be in your front yard. It's called the Beautification Act of America.
Why did the FBI murder Fred Hampton? Because J. Edgar Hoover said the Black Panther Party represents the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. Fred Hampton was a prominent leader of the Black Panther Party who was attracting a lot of people, not just black people, other people as well, Latinos, white people, Native Americans. But he was out there saying, I am a revolutionary, and getting crowds of people to say, I am a revolutionary. Well, that's enough democracy right now. You're dead. We're going to go into your apartment in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 in the morning or whatever, and we're going to shoot you in your bed and then shoot you again to make sure you're dead. And then say that it's your fault. Lie about what happened, that, you started this gunfight and all these heroic FBI agents and Chicago pigs and whatever had to defend themselves, which was proven to be a lie. This is the exercise of the actual democracy of this country, which means it's essential dictatorship over people, and whenever they rise up, or whenever, Fred Hampton, I think he first went to jail because he took some ice cream off an ice cream truck and passed it out to the kids in the neighborhood in the middle of summer, and that's how they first got him in jail, and then he was out, on jail, and that's when they murdered him. He wasn't even saying, I'm going to mobilize an army to overthrow the system tomorrow. He was just talking about revolution, and that was recognized as enough of a threat that the facade of democracy, the sham of democracy, fell to the ground, and the naked fist of dictatorship came out and murdered him, just like it did the prisoners in Attica. And you can even go back in the history of this country when people went on strike before the unions were so powerful, and they would murder dozens of people striking, and back in the end of the 19th and into the 20th century. So, this is the actual relations of power in the society. It's a dictatorship over those who are exploited and oppressed. It's the rule of the capitalist class over society. And it's very useful for them most of the time to have elections because that's a way they can involve people in their own oppression. And your rights will always come right up to the point where in any way they're perceived to threaten the system by the powers that be, and then you'll see the naked, murderous hand of the dictatorship come out. And the dictatorship of the proletariat socialist state power is radically different from that in the ways that I've discussed.
Y'all know the girl Rose, the black lady that's married to the white dude who, when they got into it a couple months back, that she put their business out saying how when they met he was sleeping on the couch in somebody's basement and how she make all the money, she pay the bills, he don't pay not damn bill. That's why when she put his ass out, he couldn't even get no hotel. And she the one that be going on rants about black American men, talking down on black American men. She look African, just keeping it real. You feel what I'm saying? When her black American man, the father of her son, is a successful black American man in a happy, healthy relationship. And it reminds me of a couple months ago, I had talked about how when the trend was going around about I'm black and I'm not afraid to admit that I'm scared of black people or that I'm scared of the hood or we shouldn't be outside in bonnets or that trend. And I had talked about how y'all really just anti-black. You feel what I'm saying? And y'all give everybody every excuse on how you're not, but y'all never find each other. Y'all always finding them pink people or them pink adjacent people with a taco. You feel what I'm saying? Y'all never find each other because if you feel this way and he feel this way and it's not anti-black, why ain't y'all together? You feel what I'm saying? This reminds me of that. You could have got you could have got you a successful black man. You could have got you a mediocre black man. Hell, that man ain't paying that damn bill. I know a man right now work at Popeyes. He'll at least pay your light bill.
What do I tell my black girlfriend though?
Do you really have a black girlfriend?
Yeah, I do.
So shocked.
Okay.
Do you want me to
now
call?
that's disgusting, Umar. Now that's
You
disgusting.
would tell her that Dr. Umar wants to know, and this is no disrespect to you at all as a human being, but Dr. Umar would like to know why she couldn't find a black man, and I would like to know from you why you couldn't find a white woman.
I didn't want to fight a white woman, and I love her.
Why did you want the chocolate queen?
Oh, I can tell you why.
I mean, like, I've never felt so comfortable with a person in my life, and I feel like she gets me and I get her. And, like, and I feel like I've never felt like that supported in my life before, honestly.
And would you be honest enough to admit that although she might be the recipient of your love, that you do carry a disdain towards all other members of her race?
I don't. I have zero disdain. But if you want to speak to my black girlfriend, I'll call her right now.
No, it's okay. You know, she suffers a little bit of self-hatred.
Why do you think she suffers from self-hatred?
You have a little bit of slave master syndrome. That's why you have
slave master syndrome.
Umar.
I'm a Jew. What do you mean?
That doesn't mean anything. European Jews were some of the biggest participants in the transatlantic slave trade. Y'all built the ships and financed them as well.
That is literally like the kind of stuff.
That is absolutely
it
the
is
truth.
Not
Did you
true.
know the Secretary of War for the Confederacy?
Google it right now. You can Google that right now on your phone, and you'll see that's
and
a
he owned
Snopes
hundreds of slaves.
Yeah, but you're like, if you're looking at the whole slave trade as a whole, Jews were a tiny part of it compared to Muslims. And even if you look at the Arab
look
world,
at the financing of the voyages, y'all were more than a small piece now.
You know
y'all
our page is about to get suppressed, right?
I
mean, and respectfully, here's my issue with the Jewish community.
Yeah, tell me.
As much as y'all hold the world accountable
get banned
for turning their backs on your ancestors during the German Holocaust,
we're going to jail.
I don't see y'all showing as much energy and attention towards your role in the African Holocaust. And I consider that to be somewhat hypocritical, that the world should acknowledge the debt it owes you.
We can't do
but
this.
you don't have to acknowledge the debt you owe black.
So Joe, let's sit in this. This is great.
If you still don't believe that integration is responsible for ruining the black business,
Watch this.
Prior to desegregation, actually my parents are in that generation in which they weren't allowed to patronize certain kinds of restaurants. In that particular environment, if you were a black-owned restaurant, you were guaranteed a certain number of customers that didn't have any other option of eating in other establishments if they wanted to eat out.
Of course, integration was great, but economically, it had a deleterious impact on our community. The first punch was we were so happy to have the opportunity to shop at Woolworth and Sears that we felt like we was sticking it to somebody by going there. Hey, I'm going to spend all my money with you and show you that my money is just as green. Then the second punch was that those retailers started recruiting my husband and me. So when I'm coming up in the 70s, the big goal of any mama, any big mama, is for her daughter or her son to get a good job at a big white company. So our would-be entrepreneurs, our talented 10th, as we call them in our community, we flocked to corporate America. And they got all our money, and they got all our talent.
We began to go out of the 20 generations of slavery. We started to emerge and started to have this period of time where the communities began to come together. They were still segregated during the Jim Crow era, but we had the local physician, we had the local business, we had a place where you can go and buy goods and services. You had to go and get educated, so we had to have our own historically black colleges and universities. And so you can go and get a PhD, and all of that isn't unprecedented.
We have always had mom and pop stores in our community, whether it was to sell ice cream or sell tools, and that was how we made our money. And typically we ran businesses together as husband and wives, family. The children would be there helping. The family was strong, marriages were strong.
What happened is there were some unintended consequences when the civil rights era happened. And as a result was desegregation, not necessarily integration. The unintended consequences of that struggle is that the breakdown of businesses started to take place.
Black folk had 100 times more before social integration hit. I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We were looking for this social integration because we had our own businesses there. My family was part of one that had the only black bus line in the entire United States. We had over 500 buses. All of our mechanics were blacks. All of our drivers were blacks. Electricians were black. Everything was black. We had that from 1927 up to about 1967. When they would kill our buses, social integration. You also are talking about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King going down to Alabama, want to integrate the bus lines. Integrate whose bus lines? White bus lines. We had two cab companies in Winston-Salem. Whites had two cab companies. They had the Bluebird and the Yellow Cab. When the integration movement started, what they wanted to do, blacks didn't want to ride black cabs anymore. They wanted to ride in white cabs. We had our own movie theaters. There was a Lincoln and Lafayette theater in every major city and every black community in America. So guess what? Blacks didn't want to go to the black theaters anymore. They want to go to the white theaters.
Tulsa's Black Wall Street, from the name Negro Wall Street, given by Booker T. Washington, established wholly by black families, business leaders, and entrepreneurs less than 50 years after slavery ended. The district was so successful that a dollar would stay within the district an estimated 19 months before being spent elsewhere. Not only did black Americans want to contribute to the success of their own shops, but there were also racial segregation laws that prevented them from shopping anywhere other than Greenwood. In barely 2 years after the 1921 massacre, every house and structure was rebuilt, with more than 100 more African-American businesses in place than were there before the riot itself, until the 1960s, when desegregation allowed blacks to shop in areas from which they were previously restricted.
They don't want any more Negro business, and that Negro business which exists, they say that should be integrated. Well, if it's integrated, what has he got? He wants to lose everything. That type of propaganda is the brainchild of the communists. The NAACP collects millions of dollars through racial incitement. But what do they do with that money? They do not spend one single cent to build any factories or shops to create jobs. They do not spend one single penny of the money that they collect for the purchase of land and home construction, because they consider the purchase of land and development of a Negro community as segregating yourself. They're only interested in one thing, to get into every neighborhood, but build nothing yourself. Unfortunately, it's only a Negro minority of intellectuals and leftist Negro preachers who presume to speak for all of the Negro people. They try to silence all opposition by calling anybody who disagrees with them as Uncle Tom.
If white immigrants can come to this country 50 years ago with nickels and dimes and no education, and come here and pool their little nickels and dimes and no education, and set up little stores, develop these stores into larger stores, develop this into an industry which creates job opportunities for whites. And today the black man, according to the government economist, has spending power of $20 billion per year. We feel that with the black man spending $20 billion a year, not setting up any businesses, not creating any industry, not creating any job opportunities for his own kind, he's not in a moral position to point the finger today at the white man and tell the white man that he's discriminating against him for not giving him a job in factories that he himself set up. If the black man has $20 billion, and these so-called Negro leaders are such geniuses that they can integrate white restaurants and integrate white factories and force themselves into that which the white man has set up, they should use this same ingenuity to show the black people how to pool our wealth and set up something of our own.
There's a reason we were taught to see integration as a solution to a problem as opposed to a problem to a solution.
I feel like a complete asshole because I never thought about that. Like that whole time they did the boycott, they should have been trying to
established their own bus company as opposed to wanting to ride. I never thought about that. Y'all boycotted for a year just to want to ride on the front?
See, you're a smart man.
I never thought about that.
but you got it now, right?
Yeah.
Leave whatever comments you want in the comment section, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Southerners had wakened one morning to find themselves labeled villains, living outside the law. There was even wild talk of sending federal troops into the South. The South was angry, and the South was perplexed.
I think that we're very satisfied with the conditions as they roll along now, and we don't want a lot of change. We like to keep it as it is. Let each person stay on their own side of the fence.
You wouldn't be for desegregation at all then, would you?
No, I think segregation is the proper thing.
What about this business that a lot of people say about being created equal? What's your feelings about that?
I don't think they are.
How so?
Well, I can't quote what I know
Well, may I ask where you know it from then?
from the Bible.
Some of my best friends are Negroes. If I got into trouble, I think the Negroes would come to me as quick as anybody else in the world. I give you a little instance. I was standing down on the street with a gentleman from another city last Saturday, and I reckon 15 or 20 Negroes passed, and I spoke to them. Good morning, John. How you getting along? Very well, thank you, Mr. Wall. Getting on fine. And that went on for 15 or 20 Negroes in less than 15 minutes. And we love our people.
Leroy Percy, Mississippi cotton planter, a quiet, thoughtful man.
In the South, we find ourselves in this position. One of the fundamental basic foundations upon which the relationship between the races was based has been for over 100 years segregation. Whether that's right or wrong, all of a sudden we are told by the Supreme Court that the whole basis for our society in the South has not only been wrong, but 100% wrong. And actually, it's easy to understand why this created such a shockwave in the South.
White supremacy had always been an important political factor in some areas of the South. Again.
So in one of my videos, people had a lot of genuine questions because I said police were designed to kill black people. And I meant designed. Like, yes, they do disproportionately kill a lot of black people for no reason. That is a fact. But it is also a fact that that was their original purpose. They were slave patrols. The first police in America were in the Carolinas in the 1700s, designed to catch runaway enslaved people, to enforce the rules of slavery. That was the original purpose of police in this country. And don't think that ended when slavery ended, because after the 13th Amendment was passed and slavery was abolished nationwide, states enacted black codes, which basically made it super fucking hard for black people to vote or to get access to fair wages or to get access to social services. And they had state-sponsored militias that would enforce these black codes. And once the 14th Amendment was passed, and on paper at least, gave black people equal protections under the law, they enacted Jim Crow laws. And who do you think enforced those but the police? Who do you think? The police were also empowered by the state to actively police black communities more and enforce Jim Crow laws heavier than other laws to make a statement. That was an intentional decision. So this idea that police haven't always been about racism is absurd. That's been their purpose from day one. The other component is, even if racism wasn't the literal origin story of police, which it is, they are so racist as a system that there is no way it was an accident. There is no way it was just a couple bad dudes, right? That system is producing the bad dudes. And that's what you have to realize. You don't get a system that imprisons black people disproportionately for the crimes they commit at the same rate as white people, right? Shoots them and kills them disproportionately to white people. Insanely disproportionately. Right, is weird, polices black neighborhoods for just really high rates for some reason, right? You don't get all of this systemic racism if it's not systemic. You don't get a system that fucking racist by accident. That's what I mean when I say it was designed to be racist. It's two things. It was, one, literally designed as a racist system. And then two, there's no way it couldn't have been with how racist it is. And people say, well, what would you do instead of police? I'm not saying we need to get rid of law enforcement. That's not what anybody's saying. What we're saying is we need to get rid of the current system of law enforcement. For example, there's a town in New Jersey, I believe it's called Camden, that had a very bad policing problem. So they disbanded their whole police force and rehired from the ground up, talking with civil rights organizations and local organizations to try to get a better sense of what the community needs. And while the system is very far from perfect, residents say it is a lot better. And crime is down. And that's a way to do it. There are a lot of different towns that are doing this now. You can disband your whole police force and fix it from the ground up. That's a possible thing to do. And so there are a million different things you can do to fix, right? Mental health counselors on the ground, right? Addiction centers, needle exchange places, right? There's so many different little disarming police in a lot of situations. There's so many things you can do to make policing better. And a lot of it does require ground up change. And I don't have all the answers. I would never claim to have all the answers. But there are people that certainly get close. And they're working on these things. And they have solutions. And we're just not taking them. Just because we get so stuck up about critiquing police. We should critique them. They're public servants. They're open to critique. They're supposed to serve us. And if they're not, they should be critiqued for that. So, yeah. Police are racist, fuck cops, oink oink, etc. Also, total sidebar, but I fucking hate it when white people will be like, but every cop I've ever met has been super nice and cordial. Yeah, I'm sure they have. To you. That's like when the frat guy is like, no, bro could not have assaulted you. He's like the nicest guy ever. Yeah, to men. Like, it's so fucking stupid. Like, of course the cops are nice to you. You're literally white. I've never had a bad interaction with a cop. Of course I haven't. It's not about me.
To all my black people, when you are out in this world, keep your head on a swivel, keep yourself protected at all times, and watch out for your brothers and sisters. Shit is getting straight wicked out here. We got what happened to Sade Robinson. What's going on with Calvin Riley? Police officers in Alabama don't even have to turn on their body cameras anymore. Every single day, they are making it easier and easier for us to be hunted. Let's just call it what it is. Let's just call a spade a spade. They don't care about what your gender is, your sexuality, how much money you make, what car you drive, what neighborhood you live in, your accomplishments, where your family from. These people don't give a fuck about none of that. They see the color of your skin and they want your ass gone. We may not be a monolith, but we damn sure are getting treated like it. I don't give a fuck if I see your ass in Target and I ain't never met you a day in my life. It should be an unspoken rule that we have each other's backs no matter what. Because ain't nobody else coming to save us. The justice system don't give a fuck about us. And 9 times out of 10, they the perpetrators. And everybody needs to be accounted for. Your friends and family should know where you at all times. Who you with and what the fuck you doing. I don't give a fuck if you Black Dynamite. Your friends and family should have your fucking location. It shouldn't be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Too many people are coming up missing. And ain't nobody out here finding them. This shit is sick. This shit ain't no fear-mongering. This is just the truth.
I already said this in a video, but they stopped showing it to people because it got too controversial. So let me say it in the plainest terms possible. The American dream is anti-blackness. It always has been. The promise is no matter how broke or destitute you are when you come over here, when you arrive in this country, there will be a class that is designated to be worse off than you are permanently. That is the African American subclass of this country. Historically, those are the floorboards on which America built its immigration population. So the Italians came over, the Irish came over, Jewish people came over. They weren't even considered white, but they earned their way into the cult of whiteness by shedding themselves of thousands of years of culture, displaying anti-blackness, and then being accepted into whiteness. The same pyramid scheme / hazing process has been proposed to every immigrant group that has come into this country. East Asians, South Asians, even Africans have been proposed this same concept. But again, because there are so many layers and hidden clauses to the concept of race, people who phenotypically are black participate in this game and try to earn a baptism into the cult of whiteness in some cases. And they are rudely surprised to find out that they do not get accepted. And moreover, over the course of time, being in the context of America, as they lose some level of connection with their ancestral practices, potentially, they find themselves essentially identifying as African American. And that's not a bad thing. I just think, man, I'm not even going to try to keep going. But yeah, you should go find that video. Like, it's still there.
Well, farming was a term that was used by British social workers to describe a phenomenon that occurred in Britain after the Second World War, whereby the Nigerian immigrants coming to Britain would foster or farm their children out to white working class families. We're talking thousands of Nigerian children all over Britain, in order so that they could work and study. And the idea was that once they'd accomplished what they set out to do, graduated, saved enough money, they would then collect their children and return to their native homes. That practice became known as farming. And I was farmed at the age of 6 weeks old to a white couple in the southeast of England, about an hour and a half outside of London. The film, with the same title, follows my journey under that process.
This was unique to Great Britain?
It was. It's peculiar only to Britain and peculiar to only the Nigerian immigrants, because at the time Britain was going through an economic recession, and it called upon its colonies, the West Indies, India and Africa, to come and help rebuild it. So it was kind of like an expedient labor force.
So how old were you when you were taken to this white couple?
6 weeks old.
And how old were you when you left?
16. You can imagine at 6 weeks old, my white foster family were my family. My 2 siblings were with me, and within the house there were another about 7 or 8 other Nigerian children from other families. So we all considered ourselves as a family, and our foster families as our parents. And I just grew up there, as you would in Britain during the 70s. The big difference, of course, being the area where we were placed, which was a town called Tilbury Town, was notoriously racist, and they'd never been exposed to black children or black people at all. So we were the first blacks to be, placed in that environment. So it was a very racist right-wing town.
Random variation, etc., is nearly impossible, and in fact this has led the genetics crowd really into some really big problems trying to explain things like this. And so what they'll do is, yes, quite rightly, the mitochondrial DNA has fluctuated, and you can backtrack that fluctuation. But what else has happened in terms of other interventions to do with both the DNA and with the things that control what DNA does can actually happen an awful lot faster if deliberately put in there.
Right.
But there is a special, do you want to explain the special about melanin and how it protects the cell, the DNA inside the nucleus? That's very important.
Part of the reason you can't do these experiments, where there's a lot of melanin around, the melanin actually in a lot of people, in black people, it's actually spread out through the skin. It spreads out through the cells and covers everything. But even in a lot of white people, the melanin actually will coat the nucleus of the cell. And therefore the DNA, your central DNA, even in white people, can be actually well protected from the actions of the ultraviolet light.
There's no doubt in people with higher melanin, natural higher melanin, that it's far more likely that that melanin will be coating the nucleus, the cell wall of the nucleus of the DNA. Now the point about that is that ultraviolet light, which is often used to splice DNA, is blocked by that melanin. It absorbs it. It doesn't allow it in to interfere with the DNA. And it could well be, and this is Nigel's thesis, that this was a blocker for them when they were trying to genetically alter the species. And therefore, when maybe just out of random mutation something like an albino came along, they discovered, wow, we can get straight in.
Right.
And it may well be that the paler-skinned nation, people on the earth, maybe have that pale skin because of this genetic experimentation to make things easier for them to work on human DNA. And in fact, Professor Steve Jones argues that this thing about vitamin D being, pale skin being there to allow vitamin D to be absorbed and so on, all these theories about why pale skin happened in the first place, he believes it's not an adequate explanation. There is no real explanation or justification for the need for pale skin at all.
Yeah, because I think if
dark skin is always an advantage in every circumstance.
Right, as most people would just automatically assume, well, they went to live in the north where there's less sun,
yes,
so therefore their skin changed colour. But that's not the case.
According to Professor...
The first black American man's DNA dates back 338,000 years. The minuscule bit of DNA from an African American man now living in South Carolina has been traced back 338,000 years. The man's Y chromosome is a hereditary factor determining the male gender, the Y chromosome. It has a history that's so old it even predates the age of the oldest known Homo sapiens fossils. According to the report published in the American Journal of Human Genetics, the North Carolinian man's chromosome turned out to carry a rare mutation which researchers match to a similar chromosome in the Mbo Nation, a population living in a tiny area of western Cameroon in West Africa. They done traced the black man back to the original man. My lane that I stay in is education. I use as an example.
Who cares? It was in the past. Why can't we leave it there? Slavery happened all over the world. Enough of this division. Why can't we just be cool and let everything go, man? Couple things. Just because you don't care doesn't mean other people also don't care. 2, slavery did happen everywhere. You're right. Chattel slavery, however, did not. America was like, oh, let's take it up a notch. That's a whole nother video. Okay, here's one of the reasons we can't just leave it in the past. The effects of it today. Say your grandmother, real sweet lady, right? Gam Gam. Let's say it was illegal for her to learn to read. Not just we won't teach her, if I catch her learning to read. Grandpa too. Think of all the things you need to read. Legal documentation, medical documentation, you are and aren't allowed in this place, signage. Literal rules. It's illegal for you to learn how to read the rules to this game that we all have to agree to. You have to learn by trying things and being wrong. Gam Gam and Grandpa do at least. They decide to have children. They've missed out on all these things that they have to learn because it's illegal. There's a literacy law. Those children, while they go to school, can't even go to their parents for help because it was illegal for them to learn the things that their children are learning. So while they're figuring out these rules, everybody around them who looks like me already knows the rules. Not only did they know the rules, but they were able to write the rules. Read the rules and write the rules. Research the rules. Find loopholes in those rules. Then fast forward one more generation where we have people about your age who are going, well, why is this a problem? Why can't we just let this go and forget? Because those people are behind because of the system designed by these things. And it touches like a million other things. So I guess I care, man.
For those who don't know, it has been scientifically proven that the trauma of enslavement is weaved into the DNA of black people in the diaspora from the transatlantic slave trade. And in America, that was just a couple generations ago. So if they can have weaved into their DNA trauma, how do you think white people in this country who have massacred, colonized, genocided, and enslaved numerous groups of people, wiped certain groups off the face of the earth, okay? How do you think that's affected our DNA? When whiteness and maleness does not offer these reject children the privileges that they believe on a cellular level that they are owed, they rebel in the biggest way possible, in the most traumatic way possible, to hurt as many people as possible, to say a big F you to the society that they believe is disenfranchising them. It is a pathology, it is psychological, it is social, and it is historical.
She went and got a black bitch that got a whole spirit. She got a whole reputation. So does Kamala Harris. Birds of a feather flock together. Out of all the upstanding women that they could have went and got, Jasmine Crockett. Very in tune, hip sister in the black community. Sure. They went and got all the entertainers like they do. Remember they once got Puffy. And Puffy used to rock the Vote or Die shirt, remember? And Puffy was pushing, so homie, they're gonna always go get these celebrities. The black woman, remember how they done the black man with mass incarceration? Mm-hmm. The black woman is gonna be a sex slave. She's gonna be a slave to her desires to be pleased and pleasured through her pussy and her asshole and her titties. And that's what the white man want because he had the same free reign during slavery. So the black woman has no other value other than turning her ass around. That's why every picture, every video, you see black women with their ass to the camera. They don't look straight ahead no more. Black women do not take forward stern pictures like this. It gotta be. So homie, so that's the tone they setting for the future of the black woman. The tone for the future of the black man, he'll be emasculated like the black woman. They'll be back to, the slave master will be back having free sex with the black man and the black woman in any way he wants now because of what he's creating. Remember, he created the nigger. He gets a whole book on how to make a nigger slave. So this generation of women, they're wrestling and they're being possessed with the hoe spirit, like the young boy was possessed with the gangster spirit. So all we gonna have is gangster, hoes, and gays if we don't fight against what this is being propagated. So that's why they're saying it's okay to let a 12-year-old go be a flamboyant little girl. So they're saying it's okay to do this because homosexuality starts in the name of pedophilia. Most punks been touched. Most punks been violated. Most lesbians been molested, been violated, raped. So, homie, these different spirits are hovering and roaming and inhabiting only the black culture. The white people have always been freaky. They'll let a dog lick them in the mouth. Homie, look at porn. Porn wasn't derived from us. Nigga, porn, all that sick porn and white people. That's their nature. It ain't ours. Those nigga, we took on the nature from watching the spirit of porn.
Now I know some people are lacking in learning skills because I don't know why I'm still being asked bad faith questions as a gotcha, as though there's no answer when they're pretty easy to look up. Ned was the name of an enslaved person who invented a cotton scraper, and Ned's enslaver wanted to receive a patent for it because, like a lot of enslavers, he felt that he was entitled to all of the products of enslaved labor, including intellectual property. But because the patent application required an oath of original inventorship and citizenship, and enslaved people couldn't take the oath of citizenship, and enslavers couldn't take the oath of original inventorship without lying, the patent application for the cotton scraper was denied. Ned's enslaver decided to go ahead and sell the cotton scraper anyways without patent protection, and was even advertising that it was invented by an enslaved person as an in-your-face to abolitionists who were saying that chattel slavery is bad because it inhibits the creativity of black people. And that was a debate that wound up going back and forth for decades, with abolitionists saying that if chattel slavery was justified by the idea that black people are mentally inferior, then how is it right for enslavers to also want to claim the benefits of enslaved people's ingenuity? And enslavers were saying that this shows that chattel slavery is good for black people because enslaved black people were able to be more creative than free black people because they didn't have as much to worry about. So in 1857, the United States Attorney General issued a decision that no invention by an enslaved person was eligible to receive a patent because of the original inventorship citizenship issue. So wherever the enslavers didn't lie and take the oath of original inventorship, anything invented by an enslaved person after that decision fell immediately into the public domain with no credit. But in the field of intellectual property law, it's not denied that this was a significant number of important inventions. Besides that, this played out in a number of different ways. Joe Anderson was the inventor of a mechanical reaper that the enslaver Cyrus McCormick received the credit for, presumably because McCormick lied and took the oath of original inventorship. Benjamin Montgomery was the inventor of the variable pitch propeller so that boats could navigate in shallow water like rivers. And although he was not able to receive a patent for that invention, he decided to go ahead and sell it, made enough money to open a grocery store, accumulated enough wealth to buy his wife's freedom, and in time to buy the plantation that they had previously been enslaved at. Henry Boyd invented the Boyd bedstead, but because he was not able to receive a patent for that, he partnered with a white carpenter who took the oath of inventorship, and the white carpenter was credited with the Boyd bedstead patent. And Benjamin Bradley was the inventor of the first steam engine large enough to power a warship at 16 knots. I'm also confused by this question because I thought that even in the worst of public education systems in the United States, most people were taught incorrectly that George Washington Carver invented peanut butter. He invented many things, just not peanut butter.
When we think of the history of racism in this country, we're really thinking of the history of power.
There is a myth about the founding of this country. People want to erase American history as it truly was.
Racist ideas of African people as beastly, worthy of enslavement, started circulating.
And it worked.
What happens when we tell these myths about who Black people are and what their role in American society is?
It is crucial that we pay attention to it.
These stories, all about what's wrong with Black people.
It has so many real social ramifications because of the amount of people who have bought into the myth.
If you make us the threat, then you remove our humanity.
It justifies all kinds of horrific actions.
How are we intentionally questioning what is being given to us and what we are ingesting?
We who have suffered at this are now saying to you, civilize yourself.
The myth of Black inferiority is destroyed.
I love all of the things that Blackness has given America, whether or not America acknowledges it.
Our people have the education that they need in this incredible, critical moment. That's white rage. Anybody see Hidden Figures? Yeah. Think about what that would mean if we had had that kind of investment then. And think about where we are now as we're trying to figure out how do we get more African Americans into STEM fields when we have systematically refused to invest in those schools even after Brown. Let me give you another example. The war on drugs. We can really have church up in here now, you know that, right? On the war on drugs, because one of the ways that white rage works is it cloaks itself in reasonableness. We have to keep our community safe. We have to protect our children. We have to ensure safety and security for our neighborhoods. And who doesn't want a safe and secure neighborhood? Who doesn't want to protect our children? It sounds reasonable. But how is it then? Because the research is really clear that we have focused the war on drugs on the population that does drugs the least when it comes to cocaine. The least. And about the same when it comes to marijuana. How is it in the war on drugs we have targeted those who do it the least? How is it that we have spent $1 trillion? That's real money. That's even beyond university money, isn't it? That's with a T. Woo, $1 trillion on the war on drugs. The war on drugs has destabilized state budgets. When you think about public education, I remember when I worked in Ohio for the Board of Regents, one of the things that we were fighting for was to try to get enough state money into higher education in order to drive the tuition down so that more and more students would be able to afford college. Instead, that money went immediately into the corrections budget. You can almost map, like in California, the dollar-to-dollar exchange coming out of the University of California budget, going into the corrections budget. And I just saw a figure that said it costs more now to incarcerate someone in California than it does to send them through Harvard. So this is not an issue of resources. This is an issue of priorities. And so you're asking yourself, now self, because that's how I talk to myself, self, what could drive this kind of thing? Where as a nation, we're spending $1 trillion, where we would destabilize our state budgets, where we would block out access to higher education for our own folk. But then when you realize that the war on drugs really began to emerge after the civil rights movement and those incredible gains. The 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Hard fought for. Blood all along the way. But if you have a felony conviction, which is what mass incarceration does, all of a sudden your access to the non-discrimination clauses in the Civil Rights Act, there are things you cannot do with a felony conviction. There are places you cannot live. There are student loans you cannot have access to, so you cannot go to school if you've got that felony conviction. And you want to talk about the right to vote? Ooh, let's take Florida. Okay, I hear some folks like, yeah, take it. Let's take Florida. In Florida, Florida has what they call permanent felony disfranchisement. Now, what that means, because it's not quite permanent, but after you serve your sentence and then your time out, like parole, then you have to wait 14 years from that moment to then be able to individually petition the governor asking for your voting rights back. What that means is that when you look at Florida, about 40% of black men are not able to vote in Florida because of felony disfranchisement. 40%. Overall, for African Americans, is somewhere between 23 to 25% of voting age eligible African Americans cannot vote in Florida.
18th and 19th century, it was decided that it was just not appropriate for all this knowledge to come from an African country. Now, when did we come up with the idea that the Greeks created everything from scratch? Well, believe it or not, it happened in the 18th and 19th century. And it's an unfortunate fact of life that Romanticism, which has many great things about it, also has a dark side, which has to do with racism. And in the 18th and 19th century, it was decided that it was just not appropriate for all this knowledge to come from an African country. If you read what the Greeks said, not what we think, but if you read what the Greeks said, they said they got everything from Egypt. They got all their knowledge from Egypt. Pythagoras spent 15 years in Egypt, and what did he have to do? He probably had to spend 5 years convincing them that he was worthy to get the knowledge that they had. Remember, knowledge was power. Knowledge was sacred. Knowledge was something you just didn't publish in the newspapers. Knowledge was guarded very closely because it was of tremendous value. You wouldn't give it to anybody. You would give it to somebody who was willing to shave his head and be a penitent for 5 years, and then you might start to tell him things. Okay? And the Greeks did this. Pythagoras did this. Other Greeks did this. And they said that they got all their knowledge from the Egyptians. Now, when did we come up with the idea that the Greek? First of all, you cannot study the Egyptians as an archaeologist, or as an astronomer, or as a philosopher, or as an anthropologist. You must put it all together because they put it all together. With that knowledge, if it survived to the time of the Roman Empire, where would it have been kept? Yes, in Alexandria, in the museum, the library at Alexandria. And what happened to the library? It was burned in a war, okay? And at that point, what happened to those books that were burned? If they were written in living languages, there was a scholar someplace who had memorized the book and could just write it down again. But if it was in a dead language, like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, end of story. Can't be reconstructed.
Well, well, well. Central Dauphin High School. This is a culture. It is bred and it is fed. And it seems like it's encouraged. These ladies right here, this happened 7 years ago right here. And you know what happened to them? You see the sign. You know what happened to them? They only got suspended for 2 weeks. And they walked right back into the school like nothing happened. And the crazy thing about this whole thing with this right here is one of them is a state trooper's daughter. Imagine that. And it never came out about that. Oh, and another one in this picture is a news anchor's daughter. The news anchor's name is Tom Russell. One of them is his daughter. So no, we're not going to let y'all forget, because this is a culture down there. We're not going to allow you to let this get away with just pushing it on the rug, trying to excuse it or anything. I've seen the comments. A lot of people like this are trying to excuse they're trying to excuse what happened to Justin. We want justice, and we want it now. We want it now. If it wasn't for those thugs coming over there, chasing him down, harassing him, and I'm pretty sure they were harassing him at school too. If it wasn't for them doing what they were doing, he would still be alive today. Everybody heard the videos when I first dropped them. Everybody saw the videos when I first dropped them. We want to get justice for Justin Johnson and for his dad Orville. This stuff is a cancer, and it's time to eradicate that cancer. And that cancer is inner, it's spiritual, it's in the heart. Whatever leaks from the heart spills from the lips and permeates through the flesh. It's time for justice.
Mr. Keyes, on the Channel 7 debate last Thursday night, you said, and I'm quoting you, where procreation is in principle impossible, marriage is irrelevant. You went on to say it was irrelevant and not needed. What about marriage between people who are well beyond their childbearing age? Irrelevant, not needed?
No, it's simply a misunderstanding. The word in principle means relating to the definition of, not relating to particular circumstances. So if an apple has a worm in it, the worm is not part of the definition of the apple. It doesn't change what the apple is in principle. So the fact...
It retains its appleness.
It retains... It retains... To act as if concepts are laughable means that you want to be irrational. Human beings reason...
You said
let me finish.
It was irrelevant and not needed.
Human beings reason by means of concepts and definition. We also make laws by means of definitions. And if you don't know how to operate with respect for those definitions, you can't make the law. An individual who is impotent or another who is infertile does not change the definition of marriage in principle. Because between a man and a woman, in principle, procreation is always possible. And it is that possibility which gave rise to the institution of marriage in the first place. As a matter of law,
it's still
as a matter of law
possible
and
in principle.
But when it is impossible, as between two males or two females, you're talking about something that's not just incidentally impossible, it's impossible in principle. And that means that if you say that that's a marriage, you are saying marriage can be understood in principle apart from procreation. You have changed its definition in such a way as, in fact, to destroy the necessity for the institution. Since the only reason it has existed in human societies and civilizations was to regulate, from a social point of view, the obligations and responsibilities attendant upon procreation. So when you start playing games in this way, you are actually acting as if the institution has no basis independent of your own arbitrary whim. And if you don't mind my saying so, that's what we just heard. We heard something that wasn't based on reasoning, it wasn't based on logic, it was based on vague feelings and respect.
It was based on your quote
No, I don't mean
last
that.
Thursday night.
I'm not talking about me. I am
Oh,
talking
I see.
about what Senator Obama just went through in terms of explaining his position. My position is based upon an effort, as conscientiously as I can, to reason through the challenge that we face when dealing with the most important fundamental institution of our social life and civilization.